having found us, we packed the tent into the back of the car and we went home. And the bikes we had to come back the following day to collect. And that was the end of that. We were safe at home that evening. I can only say that as children we were fairly spoilt in terms of the gifts we got come Christmas and on our birthdays. And there were occasions when, in the evening, my uncle and aunt, Patrick and Jackie Hennessy, would come down from their home in Thurles to have dinner with my parents. And they'd arrive and everyone greeted each other. And we children were each given a box of chocolates. Now, considering that my Uncle Patrick, who's now deceased, used to be a dentist in those days, it was quite odd that he would present such a gift. Yet he wasn't our personal dentist, that being John Fleming of Dungarvan, who is also deceased, I'm afraid to say. And we as children often, growing up as young children, come Christmas time, we'd write our letters to Santa expressing what we wished to be given that particular year. And more often than not, we received items that were mentioned in the letter on Christmas Day. It was when Paul and I were around the ages of 6 and 7 years old, respectively, that on that particular Christmas, we came down on Christmas morning to find brand new, shining bicycles. Paul's one being a red one and mine being a blue one. And we were thrilled. And the likes of the toys we had growing up were normal schoolhood toys for boys, in those days, such as cowboy outfits and pistols, guns that with holsters that fired caps. These were cap guns, and wooden swords with sword covers. And I remember getting a pirate's pistol one year. It was a fantastic gift. And I also was given a magic set, as Paul was, and a makeup artist's kit, which had all the powder and face paints and false beards. And so we had great fun with that. And then there were hand-me-down toys from my uncle Patrick, from whom we received dinky toy models, toy car models, and one of them was a car transporter, another one being a very early 1950s London taxi. And one particular Christmas, I asked from Santa to get a red Pontiac car, and I got it. I was delighted with it. Another model car I had was a blue Mercedes, which took a battery underneath, and with the battery installed you could push down on the back boot and the back lights lit up. Brilliant gift. My brother Paul had a fine model of a castle, and he had tin soldiers, and I remember having farm animals, and I could set up a fence around all the animals on the bedroom floor. And of my younger brother Roderick having a very impressive Jeep when he was young, and again at that young age of about 4 or 5, Paul and I had sit-in cars that we could pedal around the house at Barnaway, and they were magnificent. And of course, once the overgrown grass became a garden at Barnaway, there were still areas that were rough, And I remember in one corner of the garden we had a large rock, a boulder of a rock, and well, we decided to make a den out of scrap wood, and well, we had a local quarry across the road from us, and we would collect scrap from in there as it was dumped, and my brothers and I often went over to the quarry exploring that area of the quarry where there was an old lime kiln disused at this stage. And it was a good dumping ground for people, and yet we found scrap that helped us build our den in the garden. And we were very fortunate that in my father's brewery he had a carpenter called Willie Bryan, who was working at the brewery at that time, and Willie made for us children at Barnaway a swing and a seesaw. So we had both these to use in our garden at Barnaway, and over the years they became disused and rotted away as they were made of wood. All the same, we had great times in that garden. One particular summer, I was on my bicycle cycling around the rose bed at the front of the house in our lawn, and didn't I fall into the roses off my bike, and I was crying, running to my mother, and she comforted me, and when I was quiet, it was felt, well, I should be rewarded for my bravery. So they brought us all into town and we had ice creams that particular evening. I was delighted. The earliest tent I had actually was a cotton one, purely for the summer. It wouldn't have been good in the rain, but I could set it up and it was great. And then my brothers and I, another particular year, we attempted to make a tree house in another corner of the garden where at this stage quite a lot of the trees my father had planted were quite mature and tall. And later still, when we were old enough, we helped out in the garden. My father had a petrol mower for cutting the grass, and he showed us exactly what to do together with filling the lawnmower with petrol, and then walking in straight lines up and down to cover the whole area of the lawn with the lawnmower. And the lawnmower, of course, would collect the grass, and occasionally the bin on the lawnmower had to be emptied, and it was emptied in under the trees of the grass. And again, in that rough area of the garden where the big boulder was, there was a compost heap. So, in fact, a lot of the grass and other foliage went on a heap to become compost. And like my grandfather, Paul I. Power, my father and my mother became good gardeners in their own right. My grandfather, having had a prized garden at Land's End, it got national publicity, I believe, during the 70s at its height. Well, without any such publicity, my parents and later my mother maintained a very good garden at Barnawee. And in fact, in later years, my mother went on to do a hell of a lot of planting of shrubs in the garden, and at this stage it's a very mature garden at Barnawee now. And there's a fine lawn there, and over the years many trees were planted around. And of course, growing up as children, being the weekend, we often went on picnics as a family, and we had a big wicker picnic basket with flasks and containers for sugar and milk and pepper and salt, and my mother would make sandwiches and salad and a flask of coffee for the adults, and of course we had soft minerals from the brewery, Power's lemonade and orange, for the children on the picnic. And we often went picnicking up in the Connemara Mountains, at Clondalkin Woods, out at the towers near Lismore, and Glenshannan Woods out near Cappoquin. And eventually, more often than not, it was a Sunday, we would go for a picnic in Glenshannan near Cappoquin, and I believe Paul would join me cycling out there. It was about a 12-mile cycle from our house, and we'd cycle back as well. And they were great occasions. having had our picnic, we'd normally walk off for a meal, having a long walk in whichever wood we were in. And of course, during all the times we had the golden retrievers, it was a ritual every day that they had to be taken on their walk, and they were taken up to Glendalligan Wood very often, and also to Colligan Wood, both of which are outside a short drive from Barnaway. As I said, it was an ideal childhood for all of us. Before growing up, the four of us, and going our separate ways in life, as we did.